Well, there'll be more on that teenager's death in France in the course of this program. But for now, let's welcome our viewers as we focus on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky says alleged Russian agent involved in the deadly attack in Kramatorsk will be charged with treason. The man, a resident of Kramatorsk, sent video footage of the restaurant that was targeted in the attack to the Russian military hours before it was destroyed. 12 people died in the attack, including 14-year-old twins, Yulia and Anna Akshenko. At least 60 people were injured in the attack as well, including Colombian nationals and a leading Ukrainian writer. Security services released a photo of a local man arrested on Wednesday, describing him as a Russian agent. Emergency officers and services said on Wednesday search and rescue efforts were still ongoing. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry says 2 Ukrainian generals and up to 50 Ukrainian military officers were killed in a missile strike in the city of Kramatorsk. Ukrainian officials say as many as 12 people were killed and at least 60 others were hurt when a Russian missile slammed into a crowded restaurant in the city on Tuesday. Russia's defense ministry officials say a temporary Ukrainian army command post was hit in Kramatorsk. In a related development, European Union leaders have gathered today to discuss the aborted mutiny in Russia and to debate what role the EU could play in long-term Western commitments to bolster Ukraine's security and financing. The nature of that assistance is also on the table in Brussels as Western countries work on a package of long-term assurances to provide weapons, equipment, ammunition, training, and other military aid to Kyiv. A draft of the summit conclusions said the EU and its members were ready to contribute to future security commitments to Ukraine. But the text caused concern among militarily non-aligned EU members such as Austria, Ireland, Malta, and Cyprus, and among staunch supporters of transatlantic cooperation such as the Baltic states, who insist the European security is primarily a matter for NATO. The 2-day summit is a regular gathering of the EU's 27 nation leaders with a range of topics, including migration, economic security, and relations with China, all on the agenda. Well, before the meeting on Ukraine today, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg joined leaders for a working lunch. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to address the summit by video link.
We will discuss Ukraine against the backdrop of the mutiny we witnessed last weekend, and this showed deep cracks in Putin's system. This mutiny of last weekend will also have aftershocks that we will see. The more it is important that we double down on the support for Ukraine, be it military capability or financial support, very important to be here consistent.
It's clear that Putin goes out of this crisis weakened, but a weaker Putin is a greater danger. So we have to be very much aware of the consequences. Everything remains unclear what has happened, who were behind this attempt of military upheaval or military rebellion. Some generals have been arrested, so I suppose that Putin will be in a cleaning mood internally and a more assertive mood.
You know that we are working on the EU side to strengthen our European defense capabilities, and I'm absolutely convinced that by strengthening the European capabilities, we are strengthening NATO, because strong allies make strong alliances.
The mutiny we saw at the weekend demonstrates that there are cracks and divisions within the Russian system. At the same time, it is important to underline that these are internal Russian matters, and it's too early to draw any final conclusions, also because it's not yet clear how many of the Wagner forces that will end up in Belarus or other places. What matters for NATO is that we will continue to support Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Russian senior lawmaker Andrei Katapolov says head of the Russian mercenary group Wagner would no longer fight in Ukraine as he had refused to sign contracts to bring his mercenaries under the sway of the defense ministry. Speaking to the press earlier, Mr. Katapolov said the trigger for Saturday's mutiny was Prigozhin's disagreement with the demand by the defense ministry that his mercenary group sign contracts. Mr. Prigozhin said on June 11 that his Wagner fighters would not sign any contract with Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, adding that Mr. Shoigu was unable to manage military units. He said that after Prigozhin's refusal to sign the contract, he had been told that his mercenaries would no longer fight in Ukraine and thus would not receive state money. And Russian President Vladimir Putin received what can only be described as a rock star welcome in the country's Dagestan region that some say is aimed at boosting his popularity following Saturday's quelling of a mutiny by the Wagner Group fighters. Russian media showed footage of the president greeting adoring supporters in Derbent. Moscow has insisted that the president's long rule has not been weakened after Wagner mercenaries marched hundreds of miles, almost reaching Moscow, and captured military facilities in southern Russia, appearing to gain some support. The Kremlin has not mentioned the name of Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin since the mutiny was halted.